When I was 16 years old and in my junior year of high school, I had 9 periods in a school day. Fifth period was lunch, and straight from there was my astronomy class. My astronomy class was actually held in one of the 2 basement classrooms of the school. My high school was big. There were 3 floors, and even that wasn't enough to accommodate all the classes offered, so the school built 2 classrooms in the basement. It was honestly kind of creepy down there when nobody else was around. It used to be a janitorial area, but it was remodeled to better resemble a typical hallway. The only thing was there were no intercoms or loudspeakers down in the basement. For that reason, no classes were held down there first period for the morning announcements. Everyone referred to this little second of the basement as the chamber, and everyone always tried to get classes down there because it was air-conditioned and the classes were typically easier. Plus, it had its own bathroom. Down there, we had a quiz in astronomy that day. Usually, I was one of the first ones done because I knew pretty much everything there was to know about space. But today, I was struggling. I'd barely gotten any sleep the night before, and my mind was still stuck on the events of the previous evening. I couldn't focus on the test. All I kept thinking about was how much I liked this girl from my Spanish class. We had started talking more and more recently, and I was beginning to develop feelings for her. I wanted to ask her out, but I didn't know how. I mean, we barely even knew each other. But then an idea struck me. I would ask her out on our astronomy field trip coming up in 2 weeks. I was so excited. I started daydreaming about what I would say to her and what she would say back. I was so caught up in my thoughts that I didn't even hear Mr. Williams call my name. "Mr. Williams, are you listening to me?" I snapped back to reality. Why, yes, sir," I stammered, blushing furiously. Mr. Williams looked at me, his face expressionless as ever. He didn't say anything. He just turned and walked away. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I looked down at my test paper and started to answer the questions. The bell rang, and I was out of there in a flash. I walked past Mr. Williams, who was sitting at his desk grading papers, and I heard him mumble under his breath, "Get out of here, Williams." I didn't know what he was talking about, but I didn't care. I had more important things on my mind, like asking Sarah out on the field trip. Yeah, that was definitely going to happen. As soon as I finished my quiz, I texted my friend who was in the other basement classroom to meet me in the bathroom. I was bored out of my mind, and class was just so easy today. A few seconds later, the door opened and my friend JJ entered the bathroom. We were joking around for a while until JJ checked his phone and said someone texted him saying the school was going on lockdown. We both looked at each other with the same grins on our faces. Neither of our teachers saw us leave the classrooms, which meant we had free range of the school. And let's be real, when's the last time the school was on lockdown? It was probably years ago. So we were both a little rusty on the rules. I think we were both just curious what would happen if we broke them. We agreed to sneak upstairs and look around the hallways just for the hell of it. The worst that would happen is that we'd explain how we couldn't hear the announcements in the basement classrooms. Upon opening the basement door to the main floor, we were surprised to find all the lights had been turned off. The hallways were pretty much pitch black aside from the light pouring in from the doors in the lobby. This was legit because usually the lights were left on in the hallways during lockdowns. Something was going down, and we didn't know if we were even supposed to be walking around. JJ stepped out a little further into the hallway, and I followed suit. JJ then looked down the hall and said, "Who's that?" I looked, and emerging from the darkness was a man. At first, we couldn't tell if he was a teacher or not, but as he got closer, we realized this guy wasn't dressed at all like any staff member. He was dressed like a bum. "Let's go," I told JJ as we hurried back down to the basement. He reached the door just as the man reached the end of the hallway. We both stopped dead in our tracks. What did this guy see? Was this guy one of the staff? Was he investigating the lockdown? Was he an intruder? Was he going to tell on us? All these thoughts were racing through my mind as I looked over at JJ. His eyes were wide with fear and his foot was firmly planted on the step, keeping him from going up. "I can't believe I'm about to say this," JJ whispered. "But let's just pretend we're not down here." I wanted to argue, but as I looked into his eyes, I knew better. I slowly backed down the steps and kept my eyes fixed on the man. We were told to go to the bathroom by a random guy in a mask. We thought it was a bit strange, but we went anyway. As we entered the bathroom, we saw that whoever this guy was, he had already turned off the lights and shut the door to both classrooms. So, to avoid making a scene, we decided to hide in the bathroom. I shut the light off first thing, and then we both went to hide in the corner stall. There was complete silence in the room. No ventilation, no heaters, nothing. Just the sound of me and JJ breathing and an occasional drip from the sink. The door to the bathroom suddenly opened and light from the hallway poured into the bathroom. For a brief moment, the door shut and the bathroom was once again pitch black. Me and JJ tried our best to control our breathing. The room was so silent that we could hear somebody walking over to our side of the bathroom. The person stopped and started breathing really heavily as if they were out of breath. Me and JJ were both scared to death. JJ did something very dumb. He whispered in my ear, "We have to crawl out through the other stalls." The room was so silent, however, that even JJ's whisper could be heard from across the room. The heavy breathing outside the stall stopped and the person tried pressing the stall door in. That was when I whispered, "Go under the stall." We both crawled under the sidewall to the next stall over, and then the next stall, and then finally out to the other side of the bathroom. The person was now full on banging on the stall door. Me and JJ hopped up off the floor, opened the door, and as the light filled the room again, we saw the guy from upstairs in the corner. We pounded on the door to JJ's class. The teacher let us in within seconds. JJ explained everything as the teacher locked the door. "Did you guys see the guy? Was he holding a gun?" The teacher's eyes were wide with fear as she looked at us. We both nodded, still shaken from the experience. That's when the fire alarm went off, sticking out of the man's pocket. I was a sophomore in high school and my friend JJ and I were fooling around in the third-floor bathroom. Suddenly, "Hey man, I think I just saw a gun sticking out of your pocket." I was shocked. I didn't see a gun, but I went along with it anyway. Usually a bunch of high school students would be laughing their asses off at two students causing a scene like this, but I noticed all the kids sitting in the corner looked genuinely concerned. A sudden bang at the door made everyone jump and a couple of girls squeal out of fear. JJ and I could see the man standing at the door looking through the window while trying the doorknob. After a few bangs on the door out of what seemed to be anger, he turned and walked down the hallway back to the stairs. We don't know how much longer the lockdown went on for, but for over an hour we sat in silence in the room other than the teacher occasionally asking me and JJ questions in a very concerned tone, shaking his head after everything we would tell him. Eventually, somebody from upstairs called the teacher, and he instructed all of us to single file walk up the stairs and out of the building, where we would be greeted by cops. Me and JJ did the best we could at describing the man to the cops and to the dean. One of the cops patted me on the back and we were sent off to go home. After this incident, the school installed cameras everywhere and ramped up the security budget. This incident never got media attention. So, honestly, we never found out if police caught the guy. I'm convinced that man had no other intentions but to kill us then and there in that bathroom stall. I'm a retired New Jersey police officer. Throughout my 20 years in the force, the most disturbing call I ever received was, my flashlight was starting to die. I needed to find this guy before my flashlight died completely. So I started checking lockers, slamming them open one by one. This one locker had a bunch of coats hanging from it. I remember thinking, why would they leave their coats here? And then the voice came from this locker. It said, hey, what are you doing?" I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. What did he mean? Was he trying to trick me? Was he armed? Was he going to jump me? Suddenly, the voice came again, this time closer. "Hey, what are you doing?" He was getting closer. I could hear his footsteps now. I could hear him shuffling around. I don't know how long I stood there with the locker door in my hand. But then I heard more footsteps. My backup was arriving. As they were running through the school, I remember collapsing on the floor next to the locker, putting my ear to the cold metal, listening for any sound. But the footsteps of my backup were louder than anything in that room. They found the guy hiding in that locker. He was taken into custody without incident. I never did find out what that noise was in the locker room. I never found out if he was armed. I never found out why he tried to hide in that locker room. I do know that the principal at the school had received an anonymous tip that morning of a suspicious van driving around the neighborhood. The police received a call about a stolen van matching that same description not 10 minutes after the school went into lockdown. We believe that same man was responsible for both. As I'm telling this story now, I'm getting goosebumps because honestly, to this day, I still don't know if that guy was armed or not. Do you want to hear another scary story? Click the video on screen now. The room was insane. I held my flashlight in one hand and my gun in the other as I snuck to the other side of the locker room. It seemed like wherever I was in the room, the dings and thuds would be coming from the other side. I was standing in the corner of the locker room, right by the door to the bathroom, when the sound of someone slamming a locker door from another room made me jump out of my skin. I went in the direction where I heard the slam to find out that it was from the boys' football team locker room. There was no door separating the main locker room from the football locker room. The lockers in here were also 3 times the size. I finally had the nerve to make my presentence known by shouting police. After I shouted, someone started screaming help from somewhere in the room. It was very muffled, though. The kid pounded on a locker door on the other side of the row I was in. When I found out that the boy was trapped inside of a locker, I felt sick in my stomach. I told him I'd be right back once again, calling for backup while running outside to where the white van was. It was gone. My biggest mistake was not getting the plate number first thing. I told dispatch to be on lookout for a suspicious white van. I ran back into the school and instructed the staff in the front office to end the school day and to send somebody with a key to the locker room to get the boy out of the locker. As I approached the locker room again, I could hear the boy screaming and the man with him talking. The man was trying to convince the boy to come out of the locker. As I got closer, I could hear every word that they were saying. The man said, "You don't want to be in there when the cops come in. You don't want the cops to find you in there." The boy responded by saying, "I don't want to go out there. He has a knife." The man responded by saying, "That's okay because I have a knife too." At this point, I kicked the locker open and the man and the boy both screamed. The man looked at me and then at the knife in his hand and then back at me. He dropped the knife and put his hands up in the air. I drew my gun and pointed it at the man and ordered him to put his hands behind his back. He did so without hesitation. I handcuffed him and patted him down. He had no wallet or ID on him. So I asked him, "What's your name?" He said, "James." I said, "Well, James, I'm going to need you to tell me what you were doing in that locker with that 12-year-old boy." He responded by saying, "I don't know." At that moment, I knew that this was going to be one of the many long nights that I would have while working in narcotics. This happened a week later. I was staying in a Hampton Inn in New Jersey when I was visiting Rowan University, a college I potentially wanted to attend. My family couldn't come with me, so I was on my own. After attending the campus tour, I went to get a bite to eat at a nearby restaurant and then went back to the hotel at around 8 p.m., planning on going back to campus again the next day. About an hour after returning to my room, a strange alarm started going off in my room along with a white light flashing from the corner of the ceiling. A message started looping shortly after as well, something along the lines of "All Hampton and guests, please remain in your rooms." This is a lockdown. I'd never heard of a lockdown in a hotel. I never even knew hotels had alarms like this. I found it more interesting and exciting than anything else. Eventually, the sound of the alarm stopped, but the light kept flashing, and every 20 seconds or so the message would repeat itself. It was only like 9:30. So I turned on the TV just as background noise while I started changing clothes and brushing my teeth. I shut the lights off when I was done and hopped under the covers. I watched TV for half an hour before shutting it off. The light was still flashing with an obnoxious bright white every few seconds. It was definitely going to hinder my sleep. I was starting to consider calling the front desk to ask what was going on. I never imagined I'd be spending the night in a hotel room alone, especially not after this. So I was staying at this hotel a few weeks ago, and I'd just gotten back from dinner and I was getting ready to go to sleep. That's when the phone on the nightstand rang. I picked it up, and when I did, It was someone from the front desk. I was expecting them to tell me something about the alarm and when it would shut off, but instead, the person on the other end spoke in a very concerned voice. She told me to remain calm and walk out the door. I took that opportunity to ask her what exactly was going on. She went on to tell me that there was somebody in the room with me and to get out immediately. I dropped the phone and instinctively started looking around everywhere. Part of me was curious to see if somebody was in fact in the room. I checked under the bed, looked into the empty bathroom. Nobody in either spot. Then I noticed the closet door right next to the bathroom. It was one of those closets with a wooden sliding door. It was open just a tiny crack, and through that tiny crack I could see a person's face. At first, it didn't sink in what I was seeing, but when the door slid shut, that was when I freaked out and ran out the door. The people at the front desk showed me security footage from an hour earlier of some sketchy-looking man walking around the hallways. Apparently, he was looking for a certain room. When he got to my door, he opened it with the card. He somehow acquired, and that was it. I stayed around as the authorities took the person out in chains. It was a man, of course, on the shorter side, easily 40s. He looked at me as he passed, as if he knew who I was immediately. It's scary thinking back that he may have been watching me for more than an hour from that closet.